Yeah, as we're going through the handout here, a couple of things. One is I have distributed a number of references to source materials if we want to do some more research. And as we look at this, this belief creation area of a saga, I want you to know that the strategy stuff is a little peculiar. When we got involved in helping companies develop this, we noticed that strategic planning failure rates were also high. So as we get more into this, we kept popping these failure rate episodes, and one was on strategy. I was following Tom Peters at a conference on stage in Miami, and I got there a little early because I like hearing what Tom has to say. He's always entertaining. And he gets up and he says, ladies and gentlemen, the success rate of strategic planning in that new study that came out is 10%. He said, I think that figure is wildly inflated. Now, I'm teaching at the graduate school at Hopkins at the time, and so I had access to a lot of academic research, and Henry Mintzberg at McGill University publishes this several hundred-page treatise called The Rise and the Fall of Strategic Planning. So I've got a problem because I'm saying, hey, you got to create this saga, this strategic passion, and strategic planning's failing. So we had to do some more research, and this is what we came up with. So for you, some hints. The reason strategic planning seems to fail in the United States is because most of it just produces tactical plans. So when you open up a strategic planning document, we see tactics. And part of it's because of the analytical seduction. We teach strategy as analysis, but it's not. As we begin to look at your ancestors and throughout history and some of the brilliant strategic minds of the day, we find that strategy is really about creation also. It's about intuition. The whole point about strategy, ladies and gentlemen, is how do you out-intuit the enemy? How do you redefine the battlefield, who the enemies are, and how do you win? Those several elements of strategic shifts of your beliefs help you come up with new and exciting ways. And whenever we work with clients, we're always looking for those moments because they're industry available for you. For instance, Southwest Airlines is an example. I fly about 250,000 miles a year. I've been to California twice a week so far for the past several weeks from the East Coast. And it's great. I get a lot of my work done on airplanes, a lot of writing. My editors think it's great that I'm getting so much done because I'm in an airplane 20 hours a week. But I get to see a lot of companies, and I get to see a lot of strategic planning processes. And they are very analytical, like a SWOT analysis and this analysis and that analysis. Strategy is not analysis. Southwest Airlines, I fly a lot. And I noticed that why did they become so powerful when they violated expert opinion? Because sometimes we get calls, hey, are you an expert in our industry? We want you to do strategic planning this year. I'm like, well, I hope I'm not an expert. I can't help you. Experts only know what is already known. That is not helpful in strategy. Strategy is about what is not known. So Southwest takes off as an airline. But initially, the experts told United, Delta, Continental, and American, don't worry about them. They're going to fail. They violate airline protocol. But then the market capitalization of Southwest exceeds the entire airline industry at once, put together. And the experts never return their money for their flawed advice. What happened? Good question. Well, they shifted the battlefield. They were not really competing to crush an airline. Kelleher wanted to take out a CEO, and he was not the CEO of an airline company. Do you know who the CEO was? He was the CEO of the Greyhound Bus Company. See, Kelleher needs a bus that goes faster and cheaper than Greyhound. It's got to have wings. I guess we had got to park it in an airport. That's as close as it got to the airline industry. You ever fly Southwest? Feel like you're getting on a bus? Because you are getting on a bus. What do you think their routes look like? Greyhound bus routes. Their routes actually mimic Greyhound bus routes. Now, part of healing the M&A problem, I get called into a lot of M&A stuff, and I joined the board of Barclay Capital. So we're doing a big thing in Dallas coming up with the Harvard group. And it's kind of cool. I got to see these guys and how they all work. But they knew that this was the stuff that was missing in M&A failure. But one of the guys on the board of Barclay is also the former CEO of the Greyhound Bus Company. So I fly into Dallas to meet him for the first time. We go to this nice formal luncheon at one of those nice fancy business clubs in Dallas, Texas. Every city's got them. And it was a nice club. And at the most delicate time of the lunch, I leaned over and I asked him, what the hell happened to you, you poor son of a bitch? And he looked over at me and says, it was a bloodbath. He said it was a bloodbath. He said, you know, I did not know Kelleher was after me personally. I said, what happened? He goes, I don't know. He targets one of my cities. I get a 30% market hemorrhage within 24 hours. How would you like to lose 30% in 24 hours, huh? Not a good day. I said, well, how do you know he was after you? He says, by the third city. I said, what'd you do? He says, well, I started rerouting and repricing. We knew his next targets because of what he was looking at and created a stronger bus company. You see, he out-intuited the enemy. He redefined what the battlefield is. And a lot of times it's interesting. Like we may take 2 days with a client, but the shift in the belief is, what is that battle? How do we segment our markets? Is that the right segmentation? Maybe we should do something different than, I don't know, geography or size. Maybe it's about speed. Maybe it's about a niche. Maybe it's about something. That's where I want you to start thinking, you see. Because when you craft a saga, it has to make strategic sense. Ever see the movie Patton? There's a thing there where George C. Scott plays Patton on the field of battle in North Africa for this upcoming epic tank battle against Rommel's troops. Remember that scene? Now, what's cool about that is Patton has to go up against the expert. Because if you're at the military academy studying tank strategy, you're studying Rommel's textbooks. How is Patton going to win this thing? Well, in the movie, you remember when Patton takes the winning position on the field of battle, right? And when he realizes he's going to win this thing, he says something. He shouts out something. Remember what he said? Exactly. You magnificent bastard. I read your book. Now, what does he mean by that? Does he mean I read your book so I knew what and how to do tank battles better? Or I read your book so I want to know what you were believing about tank battles? That's what he meant, you see. All great strategy occurs in intuition. It lies beyond, like Kenichi Yamai said, it lies beyond the reach of conscious analysis. It exists in the domain of intuition. That's why you get companies like Zappos and Apple and all that outmaneuvering. They're not out analyzing, they're shifting the basis. And a lot of times enemies aren't rivals. A lot of times, like Porter came up with this great stuff. Maybe it's new entrants, maybe it's substitute products, maybe it's suppliers or customers. We had one company out of Chicago, they were going bankrupt. They were down to $5 million, losing $500,000 a year in data analytics for finance industry. They could track credit card consumer behavior on these transactions, these credit transactions, to see how loyalty programs and marketing and advertising programs were performing. It's a great feedback loop, looking at consumer behavior at that granular level. But anyway, they're losing money. So we go to do their strategic planning, we find out, guess what? It wasn't about their rivals in data analytics, it was the customer was the enemy. Could it be that some of you have enemy customers? So they did. So what did we do? Well, we decided to establish beachheads stealthily in other markets that would like to have the same data consumer behavioral response and analysis. And these happen to be restaurant chains and retail chains. So when the banks, of course, figured this out, they lost two of their other three largest customers, but that's not before going from 5 to 25 million in revenue and $500,000 in losses to $3 million net to the bottom line. And now that they've achieved that summit, they got to have a next pass, right? Because otherwise you're going to go back downhill again. So we went into M&A acquisitions. They're now $100 million companies. So to grow your company from $5 million to $100 million, some people would say that's a good success rate. And it works. But do you have the right enemy identified? Globalization impacts. A lot of your clients had a little problem years ago because we were working with actually a home builder in Fort Myers, and they were growing nicely, but guy, he wanted to hockey stick this thing and grow faster. So we went down, found out it wasn't the rival, it was the enemy. The belief was wrong. The belief actually was globalization. It was the proper belief. They were being impacted more by China than by their rivals in Fort Myers. Now, what does that mean? It wasn't that the Chinese were building houses in Fort Myers, but they were sucking cement out of the planet. Some years ago, you might have remembered that experience, right? The supply chain of cement became diverted to China. Anytime the Chinese want something, we become number two pretty quickly. and they wanted cement. So, well, how do we win? We can't battle the Chinese. But what they did do is they bought the ready-mix plant, Fort Myers. Guess who ended up having cement when it came in? And guess who did not have cement when it came in? What was the impact of that strategic shift? They went from $7 million in revenues to $70 million in revenues in 2 years. So I can go on and on with stories, but the whole point, you can really see quantitative moves, dramatic, 2, 5, 10 times growth within a few years by shifting your beliefs around how to win. Where's your battlefield? Who's your enemy? The reason I'm telling you this is because I want you to have successful strategic planning experiences, because it leads to saga. Because once you define what winning means, that's what it looks like. Now, if you turn to page 7 in your handout, I've got a number of books at the bottom that refer you to that you can do some reading on. And on page 8 is a series of sagas that are publicly now available. These are small to mid-sized companies that will dominate their industry. And so, as you can see, for these companies, they either chose an enemy or an ideal. Komatsu chose Caterpillar because they want to enter U.S. market space. They actually drew a picture of it, a caterpillar bug with a circle around it, and that was a symbol for battle. One of our clients is the largest Caterpillar purchaser in the United States. I met one of the senior executives at Caterpillar. He remembers Komatsu's symbol. But he said, initially, we thought it was a partnership agreement. Until it was too late. Now when you fly into Peoria, apparently Komatsu has bought every square inch of advertising space at the airport and the billboards on the way out. So when you fly in to go to a Caterpillar sales call, you have to walk through a Komatsu brochure. Fascinating. Coke, put Coke within arm's reach. They stole that from the Colombian cartel, but it works. Wherever I go on these expeditions for you, I always find a Coke. I was in the Kalahari in the month of death. The rains from Angola and Africa stop flowing down. You got to migrate or die. It's the month of October. This month is the month of death. There's massive migrations and dying in the Kalahari right now. However, a tribe stays there for 1,000 years. I figure, why don't I show up and see what I can learn for you? And as soon as I show up at this tribal African village, the first thing they ask me is, do I want a Coke? How does Coke do this? What do they parachute Coke out of planes? What do they do? But you get an example there. Nike, Crush, Adidas. By the way, this wasn't written down, but everybody at Nike has the tattoo of the Nike symbol on their flesh somewhere. How many of you have your staff has your company logo tattooed to their flesh? Come on, guys, what are you waiting? How many have customers who have your company logo tattooed to their flesh? Oh, you guys got some work to do. That's called market branding. Actually found 10 people that have that. Harley Davidson, several high-tech companies, a couple of sports equipment manufacturers, coffee house in San Francisco, and used car lot in Fredericton, Canada, in the Maritimes. Actually, they're flying me in a couple of weeks. Can't wait to see them. I go in there once a year. Whole maritime region probably has 90,000 people. It's very small. It's a part of a remote area of Canada. This guy's used car lot applied everything I just taught you here. His results are so high, the Canadian government can no longer use him in their industry surveys. Because if they use him, they've got him on the scale, and then everybody else is at 0. So they have to pull him off so they can get a spread. So they put him in the new car category, even though he doesn't sell new cars. Even in the new car category, he's in the top 5%. So these are bottom line, quantitative, balance sheet impact results from applying what you're learning here. All right, so let's take a look at where we go next with this. Belief creation method 2, executive speed. This is our samurai research. Oxford gave me permission to use an ancient manuscript that was written 700 years ago for management training. It came into play here because of this reason. It doesn't matter how great your strategy is and your saga is. If you can't execute it, it's a waste. Strategic execution is often an overlooked area in creating high-performance organizations. And part of it is looking at what's sucking you in. that's keeping you from executing. We do have common complaints from you where a lot of you feel like you're sucked into operations too much. How much time are you spending getting sucked into operations? We find 80% of executives feel that they're sucked in far too much. Far too much. Sometimes they say almost 100% of the time. Now, the clue here that we found out is that if you feel that you're being sucked in too much, underneath of you, you have a weak management team. So now let me challenge you a little bit on that, because sometimes we don't think about management teams being an issue, but you know what? It's an economic issue. And if the team is weak, your strategic execution will be sabotaged. And so will your saga. So how do we get the team to be faster? Well, this summer I did some homework for us. If you turn to page 9, you'll see a couple of lines here. And these are speed lines. The time it takes to get to a result, if you can shorten that time, you've got speed, and speed wins. Faster armies outmaneuver slower armies, but also so do faster companies. And when you look at, there's a book, more books for you here, Stalk and How It's Competing Against Time. We'll give you the statistical data on that in terms of how that works, how that looks. So we need to get faster. The problem is what tends to slow us down is all that stuff we talked about earlier, the stuff that was in that right column. Now it resurfaces its ugly head. However, it's because we probably haven't measured it. We've been ignoring it. So I'm going to give you now some data on this. But I want you to think about this. Do a little exercise, actually. We're actually going to do this in the room. I want you to think about how much time is being wasted or distracted by these things here. How many of those are actually sucking time out of the business, out of the organizational performance? For example, have you ever had a 15-minute meeting take an hour? Yeah, okay. Some of you have more than one meeting a month, I understand. Is that correct? Yeah, that's like a 75% waste of human capital. Or have you ever had a project take longer than it should have, but this stuff got involved and it just stretched it out? Or maybe an internal process taking longer. We have a hedge fund up in LA client, the staff admitted 80% of their time was spent in these behaviors. So here's the exercise I want you to do. I want you to take a small piece of paper, and I want you to write a number on it. You don't have to put your name, so you can be honest. And I want you to write down what percentage of time is being wasted or distracted in your organization from these behaviors. What percentage of time is being wasted or distracted in your company because of these behaviors? How many times are you having wasted meetings? How many times are things going too slow? And write that number down. And then if you wouldn't mind passing, let's see, this group passed to this aisle here, and then someone's going to collect it, and then on these rows to that aisle there, and someone will collect it there. And we'll come back to you with your data, but for right now I want to collect it so I don't influence your answers. Is everybody in? A couple more tables. All right, great. Let me show you what we find. We do this about 1,000 times a year, different 1,000 companies a year, because we're doing all conferences and CEO groups. And we find a range that goes from about 20% to 80%. The average is around 50. So chances are your group will be within 15% either side of those demarcations. But a 20 to 80% spread, average 50. This has been pretty consistent for the past 10 years. I think what's happening is we're ignoring the fact that our strategic execution is being sabotaged because of behaviors like this. Now, I know you've tried fixing these behaviors before. You brought in trainers and coaches and consultants to help. The problem is you kept complaining that people revert after they leave. So you asked us, and we had several consulting groups and training groups ask us to try to figure out what's going on, and we figured it out. People are actually reverting to this behavior because they're believing in something. So we're back to beliefs again. What were the beliefs driving this behavior? Fear. Fear-based beliefs cause humans to exhibit this behavior as acts of protection or survival. So you need to think about, well, where's that fear coming from? However, it's not your fault, so you can relax. I'm the it's not your fault speaker. Have you noticed that? It's totally not your fault. It actually came in with your humans because the samurai detected it. They called it the evil spirit. Let's talk about evil spirits for a second. Something else we don't teach in business school, evil spirits. But they said that, you know, when the evil spirit infects the executive starts thinking these fear-based things and projects these fear-based issues out into the world, and they have to react to those issues with these behaviors. So Sigmund Freud's born 700 years later. He calls it the human ego, the selfish ego. Still, doesn't really give us a solution yet, but we have to understand, why is the ego there? Why is it selfish? So we had to do some more research. Let me share with you what else is not in the books. Selfish strategies are the most effective for genetic warfare. Did you know that? Yeah, selfish strategies is nature's way. Selfish animals actually stay alive longer than unselfish animals, so it's very effective. Because if you're alive, you get to participate in genetic warfare, which is simply the replication of your data. Right? Dead animals don't replicate very well. Live animals do. So if you stay alive longer, more opportunity to replicate. Why do you think nature makes it so much fun for us to replicate our data? How many people have children here? Okay, so a lot of you do. Congratulations for participating in genetic warfare already. But when your child's 2 to 3 years old, what's their behavior like? Yeah, me, mine, I. What'd you do? Did you train them for that? And don't point at each other, I see you. Did you train them for that? Well, listen. No, you didn't. It's nature. It came up with their cellular structure. Actually, mammals are designed in their DNA to be selfish. And human mammals actually have the same programming. And human children that are selfish have a higher survival rate, about 3%. Scientists have found out that human children who are selfish get more attention. You probably noticed that. Okay, they get more touching, more food, and all that. They just, you know, so that helps. Also, the touching helps their IQ level increase. Did you know that? Yes, you stimulate dendrite formation in a child, it increases their IQ level in their brain. So you can actually touch your children to higher IQs, just hug them and kiss them till they're 5 years old. Problem is, they've grown up and now they're applying for a job in your company. The finger's pointing there, I love it. Yeah, they're coming in with the evil spirit. They're coming in with the selfishness, you see? See, selfishness is nature's way. Darwin was misquoted. It wasn't about survival of the species. It was about survival of the information in the species. Over 95% of the species on this planet is now extinct, so I think he has a point. But the information, it's still alive. Actually, extinct animal DNA is still existing in our bodies. Neurologists just found chromosomal bacterial patterns in our neural tissue. So when somebody tells me I've got shit for brains, I'm like, yeah, it's scientific. Yeah. Actually, 20% of your body isn't you. It's other animals. If the animals left, you're in a hospital. They're trying to put the animals back so you stay alive. The actual number of microbes in your body exceeds your cellular count by 10 to 1. Did you know that? You think you're an individual. No, you're a city. And it's all genetic warfare going on and on and on. And that's the whole thing. And the problem is when you're trying to run a company and strategically grow it, it gets in the way because of this ego, of this evil spirit. How can we possibly get rid of it? The samurai finally have given us a solution: death. Any questions at this point? Something else politically incorrect. When I open up this manuscript, the first chapter on death, I'm thinking, oh, this is not going to be easy to teach. You know. But then I began to realize they were talking about the real death, not the physical death. Even though the samurai are famous for their seppuku, their harikiri, you know, their self-annihilation, their real death was the death of the ego. In the first chapter, the first sentence said the executive must keep in mind by day and night the fact that someday they must die. That was what I had to write in the Code of the Executive when I published that back in the 90s. And it was there that I began to realize what they were talking about, and they were giving us some clues on how to execute speed in our strategic desires, to be able to make strategy happen faster. This is what you got to do. It could be that your management team is weak because they have not been taught how to die properly. And then we had to find people that were willing, crazy enough to let us do this to them. And I want to thank some of you. You've actually helped us do that. And we came in, and we've had a 100% success rate. We literally have had a 100% success rate. We've been able to find how to increase strategic speed in companies for the past 10 to 15 years using samurai techniques. I'm going to show you a little bit about how to do that. Now, what are we doing to make this happen? Well, the first death is the death of the ego. So we got to figure out, how do you kill the ego? Well, you better give them something to die for. Guess what that is? The saga. So now we take the saga you created for strategic focus and execution, and now use it inside the company as a place where people have something to die for. This is purely biological. You can't get over it, so you're going to have to look at the science here. The issue, if they cannot accept a death to their ego, what happens is they will freeze, stop innovating, magnifying other dangers, and it could be the death of anything, the project. They could be afraid of this death. The problem is that's why some of you are carrying on projects far too long, or budgets, or talked about accountability earlier or later. How do you get in, or the fear of influencing these people at some level? You know, you could be getting stopped by that. You're going to hear a great speaker later on emotional intelligence. It'll give you some more hints and insights on how to shift those beliefs and those patterns. Because if they freeze with this fear, you will not be strong on the field of battle. It all happens here in the brain. Evolution has given us more insight into our studies of evolution as to why it exists that way. You've seen these diagrams before, where at the base of the brain you get this reptilian center, and this reptilian center is where all reptiles seem to have these functions. However, something happened about 300 million years ago. Studies have been now allowing us to vector back mutational events in a species. So we literally have enough data to find out when a mutation happened. It looks something like this. This is too complicated for me, so let me do something really simple. Here's your reptilian brain. And this is where your actions and autonomic actions spontaneously take place. 300 million years ago, new brain forms on top of that, called the limbic brain, okay? Or a paleo-mammalian brain, scientifically. This is where now you can have feelings about those actions. But a small group of mammals called humans had another mutation about 2 million years ago. And that mutation was for neocortex. This was fascinating. Now we can have a thought about a feeling, about an action. We can think. We have knowledge. We have knowledge of language, of art, sciences, civilization, politics, how to create things, math, philosophy, and how to make beer. Those last two closely connected, actually, philosophy and beer. Yeah, all of a sudden, now I think somebody ate an apple. Genesis joke, all right? Genesis joke, come on, lighten up. Somebody ate an apple. We had knowledge. And the problem is this began, I think, about, now I don't have the medical research for this, but if you know any philanthropists that want to do something really crazy with their money, please have them call my nonprofit. We would like to take a check and give it to Dr. Majid Fatoui. Dr. Majid is the top brain surgeon at Johns Hopkins University. I was having dinner at his house. I said, Majid, I'd like to find research for some brain surgical procedures to see can we trace a neuropeptide impact in these hemispheres or in these layers because of the fact that I think that the ego is starting to paint its story into the neocortex. I think we can trace that biochemically. That would be fascinating research because I know it's happening. When the neocortex came online, it gave a place for the ego that had helped us survive as a species for so long as mammals, and now paint its thoughts, its evil thoughts, its selfish thoughts into the neocortex. And the reason he says, why do you want to do this? I said, because I've got executives out there trying to lead executive teams. We got project teams in the field, and we're trying to get these human employees to believe in their story, their drama, their strategic saga. And there's a battle going on in the neocortex. And I bet you we can trace it biochemically. I hope you win. I hope you win that battle. Because as far as I'm concerned, you have to go back to HR tomorrow and rewrite your entire job description to this. Dominate the neocortex of the primates you're trying to lead. They're going to hate it. It's so politically incorrect, but it's scientifically accurate. You dominate the neocortex, you're winning, and you have speed. But if you're losing, you're going to be delaying some things. Let's go back and see. Do we have the calculations for the survey that was they handed in yet, or who's doing the calculations? Do you have it? Oh, you do? Oh, cool. Right. Let's go back to this. Let's go back to this. Oops, sorry about. There we go. Let's go back to this. 28% range. I said average 50. And what was yours?
27.5.
Oh, great. That was pretty good. So you're about, let's say, 28%. And what's the low and high? Just curiosity.
65 and 1.
Okay, 1 to 65. That's pretty good. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So it's 1 to 65. It's better than 20 to 80. And you're at 28%. It's better than 50. You know, you're actually at a good range, which means you're doing really well with your companies, or it means you have absolutely no idea what's going on in your organization. But still, that's not bad. That's not bad. But here's the bad news. Tomorrow when somebody asks you how many people work at your company, you got to say about 2/3. Now, what it does provide you, though, is a great opportunity, because what if you could add 1/3 more humans to your organization and not have to pay for them? Would that make you more fierce on the field of battle, right? Would that help you grow your profits and your revenues and your customer service and your, sure, right? You have 1/3 more people with you going to battle. That's what's available to you. So wherever you are on that, start thinking about that. Maybe I need to start looking at this more seriously. Maybe I need to start internally getting my people to speed and not be wasting their time in this. Do I have a saga? Do they have something to die for? So that's what I want you to think about. Let's go ahead back to where we were. Get the neocortex, and now you know your job description. All right. There are a lot of other things too, by the way. I can refer to you in terms of creating great teams. One of the ones that is interesting on page 12, the Mental Complexity Assessment by Dr. Elliot Jacks. As you try to create strong management teams under you, Elliot discovered something fascinating. And he discovered that humans have in their brain, he's a psychiatrist now, psychiatric research. He discovered in the brain there's a function for cognitive complexity. And you'll see a diagram in his books. I'll try to fill it out here for you visually. Humans, it's not about IQ or intelligence. It's about complex thinking capacity. We're born with it. It doesn't change our entire lives. How we think in complex ways can be measured by time horizon. Think about this. The farther out a human can see into the future, the longest project they can manage gives you an indication of their complex thinking capacity, right? I mean, a day-to-day project is fairly simple compared to a 3-year project. And some of you have long-term projects. They require more complex thinking. So he uses time span. He finds out that humans group into certain levels. One group of humans starts in like the 1 day to 3 month time horizons. The next group is 1 year, then 2 year, then 5, 10, and 20 years. Now, whatever band the human is on, they can't get off of it. And it improves as they get older, but they never really leave that band. Now, I know it's politically incorrect to label and categorize people, but the door is closed, so let's go to label them, shall we? I didn't even die to do this. Whatever label they're on, they're stuck. They're stuck. So when you run into somebody who just doesn't get it, have you ever had that happen before? Elliott's research gives you permission to now give up hope on them. Because they're not going to get it. It's not about IQ. A lot of Nobel Prize winners are at the lower levels here. But the important part is, and the reason I'm using this here is, he put an org chart on these levels. And he says, this is how you design human organizations. And you'll see it in his book, Requisite Organization. He says the people at the top should be able to see farther than the people at the bottom, and they need to be able to cascade it down to action. So for you, for a strong team, if you're thinking out where you want to take your company the next 3 to 5 years, you better have people reporting to you who are able to think out 2 years. Why? You can have a strategic dialogue and they'll get it, and they can translate it to tactics. So under them should be 1-year thinkers. So the 2-year thinkers can then have a tactical dialogue with those people, and then they can translate it to operations and so forth. The problem is the level of thinkers under you on your team are not at the level of complexity necessary, then you will find yourself getting sucked into operations. You will find yourself doing someone else's job because they won't get it. So strong management teams, strong samurai teams are essential for strategic execution. They're essential for survival and implementation of your saga. By the way, I found out something else from Elliott's research. He says, excuse me, everybody wants to report to someone who sees farther than they do. Tell them of respect for that manager. If you switch it around, you got a problem. If you've got people in the field reporting to someone whose complex thinking level is not beyond theirs, that the people that the people that they're trying to lead, they will not respect that manager. They may even think their real manager is above them. So you want to flip it. You want to make sure that people are always reporting up to higher and higher levels of complex thought. You see, that's why no one can really think outside the box. Because we're in our box. And psychiatrically, we'll never leave it. So contrary to all the self-help books out there, there's no way you can get somebody thinking here to start thinking there. Stop doing that. And if you get somebody in the wrong level, because they've gone beyond their level of complex thinking, guess who else in your company knows that person's a problem? Everybody else, right? You ever hesitate firing somebody, but you finally get around to firing them? Okay, the next morning, 10 people are in your office saying what to you? Exactly. Exactly. They're waiting for you to catch up, you see. By the way, they called me last night at my hotel, making sure I made this point specifically clear to you today. They already know. You got to go back sometimes and make tough decisions. Because if you're not, you're sabotaging saga. All right. So, out of the 3 ways to drive beliefs into a company for dramatic strategic growth of your organization, you get the compelling saga, you got a strong samurai team. The thing is now, you know, as you leave to think about, does your team know how to die properly? Is there speed? Does the saga overcome the selfishness? That's the point of this module. But the next part is, how do you align the masses of the humans? That's the 3rd out of the 3. How do you take the masses of people or even clients? And we found out that humans like to group. We're a grouping species. All you have to do is trigger their human grouping instincts by triggering these 3 dimensions: symbols, rituals, and magic. Now, what do I mean by these? Symbols are objects of meaning. Somewhere in your organization, there are objects that have meaning. I guarantee you. And if you alter those objects or you can manipulate them effectively, you can actually shift the beliefs of masses of people. We had a bank, we had to transform their culture. They had just lost a lot of money paying organizational change consultants. And the guy comes up to me during a break at the conference I was speaking at. He was a VP of a bank. And he says, you know what, I've never seen this before. This stuff is all new and fresh. And I think we just wasted a lot of money because our culture change program failed. I said, well, sorry, I was trying to get to you earlier. I said, you know, what do you want us to do? He says, we want to put you on retainer. Can you come in and help us? I said, I don't know. Let's take a look. Well, we fixed it in about 2 weeks. What did we do? We used an ancient Roman technique. The ancient Romans knew a few things about organizational change theory. They had a rapid merger and acquisition campaign going on. So they had to figure this out early. And they figured it out. Whenever you take over a city and conquer them for Rome, you have to do one thing, and that is tear down all of the statues. You must tear them all down, because if any remain, the old beliefs may remain of the city. And then you bring in the Roman statues, and they become Roman, you see. So we had to find the symbol of the old 100-year-old bank. It ended up being the assigned parking place. And with a spray can in the parking lot, we had dramatic culture change kicked off for the organization. If people think culture change takes months or years, no, actually, it can be done very quickly if you can find the pivotal symbol of the old beliefs, you see. They'll make up their own. It's unfortunate. You're not going to have fun ignoring it because they may make up their own. There was a construction company we had doing a massive roll-up out of Las Vegas. And they had one of their divisions at this rapid safety violation rate. And these guys were using a lot of earth-moving heavy equipment. I mean, safety's a big deal. The feds were starting to notice. That's not a good day when the feds start noticing your company. And so the CEO is having a problem. We were helping them with their growth, but he said, we have this problem over here. Can you look at it? I said, I don't know. We'll take a look. And we said, well, wait a minute, dude, they have safety training. You know, is it skills? Yeah. They put about $250,000 a year in safety training for his company. They knew it was safety. So there's got to be a belief system. So we found out. About a week later, we came back. Oh, we figured it out. Says, you know, in that one division having problems with, they're collecting the pink slips of safety violations as badges of honor. He's like, what? He says, yeah, they compare the stacks, and the guy with the bigger stack wins. There's one of them winning. That's proof that they're bulletproof, right? They're too valuable to be fired. And here's my proof. Look how big my stack is. They can't afford to fire my ass. Bragging rights. The CEO was stunned. He's like, you've got to be kidding me. I says, yeah, you can throw another $250,000 in safety training, but until you change that belief, they're still going to violate. He falls back in his chair. He's like, oh my God. I says, yeah, we found the guy who started it. He goes, well, tell me who it is. I'm going to fire his ass today. I said, it was you. He says, me? I says, yeah, you didn't fire him. You colluded in symbol development. He says, oh my God. He says, I can't fire everybody. I'll go bankrupt. I said, don't fire everybody. Just fire 2. Why can't I fire 1? This is because they make a story, but I didn't like that guy. It was personal. No, 2 is your statement. So he fires the top 2 violators. They have the best safety ratings in their industry today. It's about symbols, ladies and gentlemen. What are they for your tribe? What are they for your Romans? Rituals are different. Rituals are processes they put each other through. One example of these is like initiation rituals when somebody joins your company. We talked about values earlier. What initiation rituals do you have to inculcate someone into your beliefs of your tribe? To inculcate them into the values of your tribe. You have a 60-day window. Don't miss it. They may make up their own. Animal feed company south of Chicago brought us in to do a 2-day session because it's great. I mean, I can't take on a lot of clients. We do about a dozen a year. It's kind of fun because I get embedded in there. And these guys had a problem. We had a 2-day strategic planning retreat. And after the strategic planning retreat, one of their outcomes was preserving their 3-generation family culture in these areas. So we had to get them go back and do an exercise. Same exercise I'm going to give you right now. We said, look, ask your frontline supervisors how they know when a new kid becomes part of your family, part of your team. They said, okay, we'll do that. Well, the next morning, 24 hours later, I have a panicked vice president of HR on the phone. I said, calm down, what's wrong? What's wrong? He goes, we did what you said. I said, okay, what happened? He said, well, we found out that they abandoned the kid on the extruder machine. Apparently that's that big machine, the grain silos come down, a high temperature pressure device makes the slurry for the animal pellets that they make the animal feed for, and the kid doesn't know how to use it, so they started up, put the kid on it, and then they all leave the area. What happens next, of course, the machine's going through certain cycles. The kid is unaware of how to do those cycles yet, so he's trying his best, looking around, there's nobody around to help, he's trying his best, gets to the point where the machine starts smoking because it's now starting to freak out and burn the material, and the kid is now starting to scream for help. They're laughing their asses off around the corner. He can't see them. And the foreman says, we could stop it, of course, at that point, but we let it go on for another 15 minutes because eventually it will catch on fire. And then the flames come shooting out. We all come running out, get the hoses, we shut it down. And the kid's like shaking. He says, hey, one of us, man, you burned out your first extruder part. They were very, very proud of this experience. I can imagine the two vice presidents and a CEO standing in the middle of the plant floor, something like. They had quality control consultants in there for like 6 months, couldn't figure the problem out. Initiation ritual. So, start asking questions. And the magic are the magic moments. Those are the magic moments that your people talk about, that are captured in the stories of your company. Like when they come back from the battle and they're sitting around the campfire at night, I want you to hide in the bushes and listen to the stories they tell each other, or the pub, wherever it is. Do the stories reflect your beliefs as a company? Because if they don't, you have to correct those stories. And you want to preserve the ones that do. This is how humans group around their beliefs that's inspired by those symbols, rituals, and magic that they're surrounded in their environment with. And the magic's important. By the way, I don't even care if these stories are accurate or true. A lot of these stories you've heard about in the press are not true. We hear these stories a lot, the Southwest and FedEx stories or Nordstrom stories. And I remember that story was going around for a while where the guy got his money back for the tire at Nordstrom's. Remember that one? Old guy rolls a tire in, he's complaining, and the cashier says how much you pay for it. She reaches in and gives him cash. He walks out, happy customer, executive touring the area, walks over to the cashier, says, you know we don't sell tires here. And she says, I know. And he gives her an Equality Customer Service Award. The board cannot trace this occurring anywhere in the Nordstrom's company. Their conclusion, let it ride. It's a great story. I found out last month somebody said in the employee cafeterias at Nordstrom's, they have a tire mounted on the wall with "Take it back" on the tire. Written on the tire, yeah. They made a symbol out of the magic moment, you see. So it doesn't matter. These are mythologies, but they're useful. And so what stories did you create last week? What stories will you create tomorrow? What stories about something happening on a job? Maybe it was an emergency or a conflict and somebody stepped up or somebody took a risk or somebody did something outstanding. It's like, hey, that's a story, you know? Symbols, rituals, and magic. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are the three things we've observed by studying you. Driving beliefs is the source of accelerating your strategic growth. And you can do that by having strategic sagas, great samurai teams, and tribal environments. Everywhere that we have engaged a client with this has produced dramatic results. I've given you a lot of case examples of that. So it does happen. It does work. And so when you look at how these apply across these elements now, apply across those elements we talked about earlier, the root causes. So they all address the root causes, which I think explains why they are so successful. Why they are so successful. It's been applied to at Apple. Apple has we took the creation stuff, and Cameron Logman, our colleague at the Institute, pioneered Apple's Creation Innovation Program. A lot of companies realize innovation will be their main strategic success component for the future. Apple is, of course, very interested in that. So we got involved with them. I didn't personally, it was Cameron leading that charge, great guy. And they now, the executives at Apple have to now go through the creativity research that was designed there from their support. We now know what the brain goes through to cause innovation breakthroughs. A lot of the new studies and new work coming out from Apple came out of that research. And actually, the source of this came out from these guys, the Navy SEALs. Cameron was teaching at the Naval Academy, and he calls me up one day and he says, they want to learn creativity. And it's like, well, why? He said, because when they run out of ammunition, Navy SEALs may die. You know, as long as they have unlimited ammo, they're pretty invincible. And they don't know how to create solutions. So that's what took Cameron to Pixar and then to Apple. That's where it all came from. So a lot of this belief-driven stuff is still growing. We're still doing a lot more in it. And as we learn more, we'll try to get them out to you. We are still a research nonprofit, and our programs do support that. If you want any information on this, you can give me your business card at the end. Oh, by the way, you wrote a percentage down on that piece of paper you handed in. A lot of audiences want to know, what does that mean economically for your company? If you want to write on the back of your card your percentage and maybe the size of your company and how many employees you have, we can send you a little spreadsheet with a quick analysis. And you can look at it and say, well, it's art class, but where do I start? Do I start with Saga or strategy or samurai or the tribal stuff? This may help give you some insights as to where to begin. Okay, so if you want any of that, or any notes I might have promised, or questions you might have, put them on the card. We'll have somebody follow up, or I will if I'm off a plane somewhere. I hope this was valuable for you. I do thank you for taking the risk to bring me in here to maybe turn the world upside down a little bit, but hopefully you'll go back, and when you get back to your office, I want you to wreak havoc on your innocent humans now that you've figured this out. Thank you.
We probably have time for a couple questions or comments if anyone has any.
You addressed who should be at the top with respect and who should be at the bottom with respect to the forward-thinking abilities.
Yes.
Does that mean that people should not be promoted up through the ranks, that kind of promotion would make the organization more vulnerable, or could kind of change the dynamics where they shouldn't be changed?
Yes. Yes, yeah, because that happens. We promote, and we're not thinking about these dimensions that are biologically limiting. And so people actually get past their level of being able to think and contribute. And has nothing to do with IQ. Totally, it's this complex thinking pattern. And so you have to be aware of that, and so do they, because the last thing you want to do is promote somebody up and they no longer get it. Now, I have had people figure it out and go back to a job they could do, and they actually were loyal employees until retirement. It depends on the level of the evil spirit. If the evil spirit is low, they would like to go back to do work again. If the evil spirit is high, unfortunately, they will have to be jettisoned off your ship.
In our current political world, how much of this should be applied to leadership outside of the company and society and politics?
All of it. You know, when you look at Alexander, Caesar, Genghis Khan, I mean, that's what they were doing. They were dominating the planet politically and extending their civilization using these exact techniques. So even though companies like Apple or Netflix or, you know, these companies are doing the same thing. So what we're giving you is patterns that have been consistent, not only today, but for thousands and thousands of years. And we've proven it. This belief-driven arena, that dimension is where the why exists. It's where the passion exists. You don't get passion on analysis. You know what I mean? It's like, what did Simon Sinek say in his video? He says, Martin Luther King didn't have the I have a plan speech. Right? It was the I have a dream speech. And we've tested this around the world. in military, the oldest industry in the world, right? Military operations. I know some of you say the second oldest industry, but I was asked to tour military operations by the Secretary of Defense. My first book came out, The Code of the Executive, and when I wrote The Code of the Executive, I thought it would be just a nice little samurai history thing. It was only 90 pages, but it took off into a dozen languages, and the Pentagon's calling. I turned them down because I don't have time to go tour military ops for 3 weeks. I'm out there with you, working with your companies, helping you drive growth. I go off, it's like I'm losing money because I can't fund research. Then they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. They said, Don, you don't understand. We're going to show you what CNN is not allowed to see. You have permission to ask anybody anything you want at any time. They're under orders from the president to answer all your questions. And I'm thinking, oh, this is a research project. And I did that. It was brilliant. And they did show us. I got a chance to work with everybody, even the special forces and the SEALs and Rangers, Delta, and even the Ghosts, the branch that doesn't exist. I got to work with the branch of the military that doesn't exist. And I rendezvoused with the Carl Vinson, the USS Carl Vinson, nuclear aircraft carrier, out in the Pacific, right off the coast here, actually. It was out there for shakedown exercises. And I asked these questions that you asked me, and it was consistent every time. This model worked. This belief-driven behavior model, everything I taught you is implemented there. And the Carl Vinson, I wanted to ask the CEO of that company a question. He's running the Death Star, right? I mean, here's a guy, he's like, take a punch with this device. What does Darth Vader lose sleep over? Have you ever thought about that? So I land on this carrier, which is a little crazy because Navy pilots were different than the Air Force pilots. They're like freaking nuts. I mean, we get handed off in San Diego. They put this on. We got to punch out, pull this. But when you punch out, what are you talking about? Wait, no, shit happens. And let's go find the boat. I'm thinking, find the boat? We're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Well, it's moving around. We'll find it. We'll find it. We're going to try to land. What do you mean try? Well, it's bouncing, man. Tail hook hits the deck. I missed the cable. If I missed the cable, prepare for a lot of pressure. So anyway, I land, get up to the bridge, call Lord Vader off to the side. I'm asking, right? I'm asking these questions. He comes over. I said, what's the toughest leadership mistake you ever made? He looks at me, he says, son, I don't normally get asked that question on this carrier. I said, no, sir, but you're under orders from the president to answer me. Then my second thought was, oh, this is how civilian casualties occur on an aircraft carrier. So he says, he thought for a couple of minutes. He goes, you know, I think it was when I had to turn this fleet around to go fight the Gulf War before taking a vacation. He's talking about passion. I don't want him in the port on shore leave, let him blow off some steam. I might have had a passion problem on deck. And military history tells me, small bands of people, outnumbered, outgunned, they rise up and win the day. The passion exceeds that of their enemies. And I might have a passion problem. We've been out to open sea for many weeks. And I thought about you at that point. I thought, you know what? How often do we wake up in a cold sweat every morning wondering, how's the passion on deck on our ship? Because I want you to start doing that. Because when the passion on deck on your ship exceeds that of your enemies, you're going to win more battles. That's why you see these small companies outmaneuver these dominant players. It's about that. Thank you.